The A's 2021 season is officially in the books. No playoffs this year, so let's review everything that happened this year. It was definitely a very abnormal season. We were coming right after the 60-game season. It took a little while to ease into, and I think it definitely did for the A's. You know, going from a division winner to playing a lot more competitive baseball in this 162-game setting was definitely difficult. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. You know, fans were allowed back. It was nice, but the only problem was the A's weren't winning. They lost their first game, their second game, and they ended up losing their first 6 games until they won their 7th game against the Dodgers. And I think that slow start kind of made them have a wake-up call because the A's did play really good baseball towards, mid-April. They had a 13-game win streak. And they were looking like one of the best teams in baseball at that point. It's funny saying that now because we missed the playoffs, but the 2 Bay Area teams were on fire, and the A's also did look good in mid-June as well. And they had good starts. Let's talk with some of the positives. Matt Olsen was stellar. I mean, he was coming off a pretty underperforming season where his batting average was low in 2020. But in 2021, Matt Olsen was an all-star, a home run derby participant, and just such a fun player to watch. Whenever Matt Olsen came out to bat, you had to think this guy definitely has a shot at getting a homer, and he did most of the time. Matt Olsen, finished with 30-plus homers on the season, which was just awesome. Love seeing this guy, Matt Olsen, just hit, so powerful. 39 homers on the season, almost 40. And so that really kind of got us going. And also, our pitching at the beginning of the year was borderline elite. Minaya was pitching good at the beginning of the year. He won Pitcher of the Month in AL for a bit, which is good. Montas did great. Caprillion, Romo, Petit, Trevino even all had great starts. And unfortunately, they ran out of gas in the tank, it felt like, at the end of the year. And that big win streak early on really set the tone for the A's. They were able to start off slow, but then come back and were able to, just shock the world, it seemed, in these crazy games where they would come from behind and get the win. That was great. The win streaks were nice, but unfortunately, they didn't pan out to anything. And then, the A's, right about the midway point with the season, they weren't winning to the same degree they were before. And they kind of had a wake-up call. They traded Jesus Luzardo to the Miami Marlins for my favorite player to watch all season, Starling Marte. This guy changed the way I watch baseball. Before I, just didn't really understand what an all-around good player on the A's felt like. But then Starling Marte joined the A's, and this guy can really do it all. His defense is amazing. His hitting ability is so consistent. He's able to get on base and steal every base, it seems, and really be the X factor in winning games. Then we had Josh Harrison, who was he wasn't quite as good as Marte, but he had all the same skill set that Marte did. He was fast, he could hit well. And then you had Yan Gomes, who was a great support system for our catcher, kind of duo with Murphy and himself. And he was a great home run hitter. We also had Chafin, who helped out the bullpen, and I'd say he was one of our best pitchers coming out of the bullpen. Now, some adversity that we faced. In mid-May, it was announced that the A's would start exploring relocation, which obviously hurt our fan base. I think about it all the time. The fact that they brought this up mid-season, it hurt the morale of the team. And I honestly could argue that maybe was part of the reason why we didn't perform super well. There was pressure on the team, there was pressure on the fans. And with that, there was no season tickets. The A's were the only team that didn't have season tickets this year offered to fans, which I thought was very strange. And it seems like they're trying to alienate the fan base. No Trevor Rosenthal, who was thought to be Liam Hendriks' replacement at kind of the closer, and he unfortunately had injuries that set him back. And while I am on the topic of Liam Hendriks, we lost him in free agency, and we lost Marcus Semien. Marcus Semien had the best season for a second baseman of all time. And Semien, and both of them, Hendricks and Semien alike, were all-stars respectively. Then, obviously, more recently, about a month and a half ago, Ramon Lauriano was busted for performance-enhancing drug use, which, suspended him indefinitely. And that hurt the morale of the team. It's just all these things. And on top of that, Chapman, who was, obviously a 2019 All-Star, when that was the last All-Star game there was no All-Star game in 2020. He underperformed, which was a big issue. And a lot of guys underperformed, but I will say, a lot of guys I didn't suspect to perform well did perform well. So I'll give him credit. But Chapman did underperform. He hit about, he didn't hit super well this year. He hit 210, which is a pretty low number for a guy like him. And, on top of that, we had the thought that we have all of these free agents, Canna, Marte, Harrison, just to name a few. There's a lot more. But Chris Bassett was a great pitcher as well. I forgot to mention him. We got Chris Davis back towards the end of the season. After, his stint with the A's, they traded him for Elvis Andrus, and then they got him back somehow. It's crazy how that worked. But the main issue was we couldn't beat Texas, we couldn't beat Seattle, and we would just, in general, against other teams too, either underperform in late innings, or we just couldn't keep our leads. We would be up. There was a game we were up 8-2 against Toronto, and then Marcus Semien hits a grand slam. We all know the story. That was not fun. But I think there are positives from the season. Unfortunately, I think there's more negatives than positives. If I'm going to be honest, it's brutal, but that's the way it was. And I loved our starting rotation. I loved every one of these pitchers. Montas, Minaya, Irvin, Bassett, and Caprillion all had great moments. But unfortunately, Caprillion got hurt. Bassett got hurt. Irvin, inconsistent. Minaya, inconsistent. Montas actually was, I'd say probably the best starter. I mean, he did have second lowest ERA besides Bassett, but I feel like Bassett, it's hard to compare because he did miss time with that unfortunate, scary injury to his face. But, I was there the whole way, and all of us A's fans. I recapped all 190 games if you include spring training, so the 28 spring training games plus the 162 regular season. I really saw it all. I really did, and we all did. And I want to thank each and every one of you for sticking with the A's, sticking with me, and even people that, heavily dislike the A's and will comment bad things about them. I appreciate you. You started conversations. And I'm just praying the A's can somehow keep Marte and Harrison, all these great free agents that we have, because the A's tend to go in a cycle where they have like 3 good years and then they rebuild, and those 3 good years don't really accumulate to World Series. They accumulate to wild card losses or ALDS losses, and it's unfortunate, but it was very interesting this season. I think we faced a lot of adversity. I'd argue we'd face more adversity than any other team in the entire MLB because of everything I mentioned. And relocation was a big part of it. That's emotional, for us fans, for the players, for everyone really involved in the organization. The A's ended up having 2 All-Stars, Chris Bassett and Matt Olsen. And they were, I think if they had Marte, before the All-Star game and whatnot, and he, was there, I think he would have been. I think Harrison would have been. The A's just unfortunately don't get, the mainstream attention like a team like the Dodgers do or the Yankees, and that's kind of why they're looked down upon by a lot of people. But they missed the playoffs. They finished 3rd place in the American League West, 9 games back of the division and 6 games back of the wild card. And at points, it looked like we were a great team, but unfortunately, it didn't pan out. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for the 2021 A's season. It was fun to review it. It was fun to recap, but it's time to move on. And I'll see you guys probably in the playoffs. I'll probably talk about other teams, and who knows, maybe I'll go to a Giants playoff game. A World Series, who knows. But thank you guys so much. And for one final time, I'll see you guys later. And yeah, let me know your thoughts. Go A's.